In this video, you will learn how to use Nmap and Wireshark on Kali Linux, and you will learn how hackers would use these techniques to sniff out packets of data on a network. We will have a look at different types of scans from Arp and TCP half-open port scans, and also look at how hackers would establish a TCP three-way handshake between two different devices on a network.
Some prior knowledge before we get started is MAC address and sniffing packets. So why do we want to know this information before we start today's video, and how are we going to be referring to this information? We are going to be talking a lot about ARP scans, TCP half port scans, and also TCP three-way handshakes, sniffing packets using Wireshark, using terminal, and we're going to keep saying, can we identify the MAC address of different devices on a network? So before we kind of get to any of that, what is a MAC address and why do you need to know what a MAC address is for today's video? Now, a MAC address is a unique identifier which is assigned to a network device. This is basically the physical address of it could be an IoT, so something which is in the Internet of Things. That could be a laptop, that could be a Raspberry Pi, that could be a phone. Anything which wants to connect to the internet is going to have a MAC address. Now, the next thing here, we've got sniffing packets, and we're going to keep referring to, can we sniff a packet? Does the scan allow us to identify different packets which are being passed on a network? So sniffing packets means to intercept and log traffic that passes over a network or part of a network. And that's what we're going to be focusing on in today's video. Can we sniff packets on a network, and can we intercept information which is being communicated between two different devices on a network? Now, what I'm looking at here on Google Slides is one of our ethical hacking lessons. I'm posting free access to these slides underneath this video, so feel free to use these slides to help you understand a little bit more about network scanning and packet sniffing. You can also visit our website here and see what we're posting on ethical hacking. We are adding to our website all of the time, so you'll be able to see new videos and new help files there for you. Now, first things first, what we want to do here is we want to consider these things. So why would you sniff a packet? What would it allow a hacker to do? So we've just discussed the first question, and this video is all about ethical hacking, how we can sniff a packet, and this is purely for educational purposes. But what would it allow a hacker to do? So one of the things, it would allow a hacker to potentially read your emails if they can unencrypt the data. It could allow us, or it could allow a hacker to see your passwords. It could allow a hacker to see what websites you're visiting, and this is quite easy if the website people are accessing is not using HTTPS. We would be able to see what websites people are accessing and what data's been sent for a website without any decryption key. It would allow us to see images from the website which you were on, and the next one, capture account information like bank, credit card info, and so on. Now, I'm going to move away from these slides for a moment, and I'm going to go over to my Kali Linux machine. So, as I said, we're going to be using something which is called Wireshark today. So I'm going to open that up now, recently used, and I've also got open my terminal window. So you're going to need a terminal window open. I'm logged in as root at Kali, and I've also got my Wireshark tool open. Now, to analyze what's going on a network, it's really simple to do that using Wireshark, which is a network analyzer. So if I want to do that, I can literally just click on this start button, and we can start by capturing packets of data. So I'm going to enter my password, and we will be able to see different information which is being passed through this network for type of protocol, and different information which is being sent to different devices. So I'm not going to kind of go into any more kind of detail here on that. I'm just going to stop this for now, and let's move this up, and let's see how much data we have quickly captured. So at the bottom you'll be able to see we have captured 68 packets of data. Doesn't really mean much to us at the moment. If I right click on here, we'll be able to see we could potentially follow these different things. So we could follow a UDP stream and look at some of the information, be able to see if it's encrypted or not, and you can see this information is encrypted. As I said, going to move away from this, and we'll come back to this a little bit later. So let's have a look at what different information can help us on these slides here. So I'm going to go on to network scanning to begin with. So what is network scanning, and why is network scanning important to us? So let's have a look. So network scanning is a process of identifying live hosts, IP addresses on a network, and an attacker or a hacker can use this technique to discover his victim's IP addresses before carrying out an attack. So this is what an attacker or a hacker would be running different network scans for. And there are different tools which we can use. We've got Nmap and NetDiscover. We're going to be using NetDiscover today to have a look at what's running over our network. We're going to be using Nmap to carry out an analysis. We're going to perform an Arp Scan. We're going to perform a TCP half port scan or half open port scan, and then we're also going to perform a TCP Three-Way Handshake, and we're going to go into some of those details in a little or in a few minutes time, so apologies. So other tools you can use, so for network scanning you can use Kali Linux, so Nmap and NetDiscover. On Windows you can use Advanced IP Scanner, Mac you can use Thingbox, iOS and Android you've got Thing, and something which is multi-platform is Angry IP Scanner. So if you want to collect network information, it's not going to allow you to analyze packets of data, but typically these are the tools which a hacker would be using to discover hosts, IPs, and what MAC address has been assigned to different IP addresses on a network. So moving on here, NetDiscover is what we're going to dive into now. So we're going to go over to our Kali Linux machine, and we're just going to type in the command NetDiscover. So I'm going to zoom in just so you can see nice and clearly what we are doing, and we're going to type in here NetDiscover, and let's have a look at what this command does when we press enter. Now what you're going to be able to see here is the gateway, which is the router IP address, okay, and we're going to be able to see different devices which are connected to my router. So we've got this device, which is an Apple device, which is using IP address 101. We've got a Western Digital, so we've got a backup disk running, and that is using IP 104. And then we have got 111, which is going to be another device on our network. So this NetDiscover tool, this allows us to identify the different devices on our network, and this is something which a hacker could use just to identify which hosts are available. We're going to move on to port scanning now. So what is port scanning, and why may a hacker run a port scan once he has identified, or she has identified, different devices on the network? So we looked at how NetDiscover works. So NetDiscover allowed us to see what devices have been assigned an IP address. Now what we can do here is we can now run a port scan, and if we use Nmap inside terminal and one of the IPs, this is going to show us the different ports which are open on a device. Now before we have a look at different ports which are open on one of my IP addresses, it's really important to consider this question. So as I said, these slides are underneath this video, and you can click on this link to do a little bit more reading on are ports dangerous. So there's a lot of misconceptions around open ports being dangerous, and I wanted to clear that up today. So open ports can be dangerous when the service listening on the port is misconfigured. if it's unpatched, or if it's vulnerable. And what does that mean when it says when the service listening on the port is misconfigured? Well, if you have a device, let's say a Windows machine or a phone, which is using HTTP or SSH, and if that is an out-of-date machine, or if it is running a vulnerable version of Windows and hasn't been updated, that means it's maybe unpatched and it could be vulnerable to different exploits, and it may have poor network security rules which a hacker can then use to then remotely access that device. So typically we've run a network scan, we've identified IPs, MAC addresses, we've now just identified an open port, and a hacker could use that information to then take advantage of a vulnerable device. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have a look at my Kali terminal window here. And what I've done here is I've run that Nmap command, and I'm using the IP address of my Western Digital hard disk. And this has just shown us the different ports which are open on this device. Next thing we're going to be talking about is Arp Scan. So firstly, what is an Arp Scan and why are we going to use it today? So an Arp Scan is referred to as a low-level network discovery tool, and we use it to associate and identify MAC addresses which have been assigned to an IP. And we use this to identify different network assets which might not have been picked up in a standard network scan. So if something wasn't identified, or if a device wasn't identified in NetDiscover or Advanced IP Scanner, we can identify it in this Arp Scan. And when we are assessing a system, we want to identify different vulnerabilities, and the first thing which we're going to be doing now is recon. So before we move over to our command line, I want to refer to this link up here. When you are using Nmap, there's going to be lots of commands that people are using in ethical hacking videos online, and you're sometimes going to say, okay, what does Nmap IR mean? Or what does Nmap SA mean? Or what does Nmap SN mean? And we're going to be using SN today, actually. We're going to be using it in a couple of minutes' time. And this is a great way to reference these different commands here. And if you don't understand the description, you can do a little bit of further reading to see what port scan all ports means, or what UDP discovery on port X means. Now, back over to slides. This diagram here is fantastic because this really explains an ARP scan in a couple of easy steps. Machine A says, I need a MAC address of IP address B. Machine B says, MAC B is the MAC address of IP, and let's see what happens when that comes back again now, is the MAC address of IP address B. So we said, who's using this IP, what MAC address associated it, send that information back to machine A. So let's have a look at how that works. I am going to press on the up arrow on my keyboard, and this is the command which we're going to be running. But before I press enter, what we want to do is we want to go over to our Wireshark tool. And in our Wireshark tool, what we want to do at the top is type in IP.address is equal to the IP address of the Western Digital hard disk. We then want to use ARP. And this is going to allow us to send that message from our Kali machine over to our Western Digital hard disk, and it's going to say who is using this IP, send that info back to the Kali machine. Now I'm going to press on stop. It's had a bit of time to run, and I'm going to firstly show you the IP of this Kali Linux machine. This is using 105. What we should be looking for is who is IP address 104, and tell that to IP address 105. Now we can see here at the moment it has said who is 104 and tell it to the gateway, but what we haven't seen is has it sent that information back to our Kali Linux machine. So let's scroll up to the top and let's go down very, very slowly, and this is it. We have run our ARP scan successfully. We've said who is 104, tell this information to 105. And it's going to send back that information, and it's also going to tell the Kali Linux machine the MAC address of this device here. Next up is TCP half-open port scans. So, one of the more common and popular port scanning techniques is the TCP half-open port scan, and we sometimes refer to this as the SYN scan. Now, it's a really fast and a sneaky way to identify open ports on a target computer. Now, the reason really why we refer to it as a sneaky scan is because it's a fast scan that's really hard to detect, because it never completes a full TCP Three-Way Handshake. And for many of you which are watching, and if you're new to ethical hacking or networks, you're going to be saying, what is a TCP Three-Way Handshake? So before we do any more work on this, let's have a look at what a TCP Three-Way Handshake is. So I'm going to go forward a couple of slides, and we're going to talk about this topic. So a three-way handshake is a process which is used in the TCP IP network to make a connection between server and client. So before any information is sent from client to server and server to client, we need to establish a connection. So the client sends over a SYN to the server, and the server is going to send a SYN acknowledgement back over to the client, and then to complete this, the client is going to send an acknowledgement back to the server, and they're now going to say, okay, we've completed this three-way handshake, let's start sending data. Now, we are referring to this last slide here, which is a TCP half-open port scan. And this is different to a three-way handshake because we never ever send back that acknowledgement. So the connection is never complete. And we are going to use this scan to identify potential ports which are open on a target computer, and we don't want this to be picked up by a network administrator, or we don't want this to be flagged by a piece of software on a network to say somebody is scanning our network and looking for open ports. So this is what a TCP half-open port scan is, and this here is a three-way handshake, and it's going to look something like this. So this is a great GIF. Okay, a three-way handshake. This is what a complete three-way handshake would look like. Let's get back onto this topic here. So, to perform a TCP half-open scan, what we are going to do is we're going to use the IP address, and then we're going to focus on a specific port number. So going back over to our terminal window, I'm going to type in clear, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that Nmap command and the IP address of that Western Digital hard disk, and we are going to look to see what ports are open, and we're going to focus on this port in this TCP half-open port scan. So we are going to focus on port 80. So let's go back over to those slides, and let's look at the command. So we're going to type in nmap and ss. So as I said, refer to that link if you don't know what ss is. So let's do that. So nmap, and we're going to do ss. We are going to use our IP, and our port is not going to be 22. We are using port 80. Now, as I said, refer to that web link. Let's refer to that web link together. So we're looking for control SS, and what does it stand for? So SS is a TCP SYN port scan, which we have just discussed in slides here. And as I said, do refer to this information before you run these different scans, and have a look and do some research into what this is if you don't understand the example in my video today. Now, going back over to slides, I know that we also need to have Wireshark set up to show how this works. So let's have a look at how to try to sniff that packet. So Wireshark open, we are not using the double pipe and ARP, and we are going to continue without saving, and we're going to press on run, go back to Wireshark, and we're going to press on stop. And what we should be able to see here, and we're going to focus on this part now, is that TCP half open port scan. So we have got here, let's expand the window size, the SYN. Okay, so the SYN which has been sent from client to server. The server has sent back the acknowledgement and the SYN again, and then we've sent a reset command. Remember, this TCP half open port scan never completes. So now you've been able to see how this works, and we're going to move on to the last topic in this video today. So last one is, how would we sniff a packet of data, and how would we do this using a three-way handshake? So we've talked about what this is already, so let's have a look at the command. Now we're going to be using ST instead of SS. So going back onto Kali again, we are going to press on the up arrow, we're going to change this to ST, and ST allows us to run a three-way handshake. We're going to use port 80, we're going to clear what is in here, and before we press continue without saving, let's go back here and enter, go back to Wireshark, and what we're going to do is we're going to press on stop. Now that we have done this, we will be able to see that we have just carried out a three-way handshake and sniffed that packet of data. SYN, SYN acknowledgement, acknowledgement sent back from client to server, and this is a complete three-way handshake here. Session. Today we have looked at how we can use the Wireshark tool to sniff packets of data. We've had a look at how we can use Nmap and NetDiscover, and we have successfully looked at how you can perform an Arp Scan, a TCP half open port scan, and how you can establish a successful three-way handshake. Do keep an eye on videos which we are posting on our channel. Visit our website here to find out more information on ethical hacking, or have a look at the programs which we offer and students that we look to prep for the Certified Ethical Hacker exam from EC Council. Looking forward to seeing you in our next video soon.